So I'm back for a quick update on Lethal Company here. If you saw my previous video about spamming jump to safely cross the bridge in Vow, that was patched out in version 47. Aww. It wasn't mentioned in the patch notes, so it came as a bit of a surprise, but it's really not surprising that the developer wanted to remove it. What happens now is that the durability continuously drains just the same while you jump, preventing the jumping exploit. I did find that directly modifying your coordinates to teleport some distance above the bridge will allow it to heal for a moment, but there doesn't appear to be any way to achieve this with jumping. Even if we jump onto the railing and then back off of it, that little bit of extra airtime when dropping down from the railing isn't enough to stop the durability loss. Unsurprisingly, it turns out this is because the hitbox was increased into something that's just tall enough to cover that, and I'll show more of Josh's demonstration of this hitbox later. Bear in mind the bridge does still repair itself when stepping off of it, and the rest of the information about weight thresholds and how quickly they result in collapse is all still the same. But without the jumping cheese, that completely derails any previous strategies I suggested, and I imagine it's going to help return the status quo to what a lot of players were already doing in the first place, simply crossing the dam instead. However, I'll amend the strategies for the collapsing bridge into 2 simple points. Number 1, just have one player cross at a time. Without the ability to jump heal, having 2 players cross is playing with fire, and you can forget anything more than that. But I'll let you know how to cross with 2 players still if you really want. If both players have 0 weight and enter and leave the bridge around the same time, there's still ample time to cross. It takes 12.5 seconds for 2 players at 0 weight to collapse the bridge, and it only takes roughly 5 seconds to sprint across. So if you're not carrying anything at the moment, this isn't a problem just yet. And technically, you can even pull that off with 3 players. But the idea of trying to get 3 players to all carefully sprint together is ridiculous, and I can't see anyone bothering with this in normal gameplay. I don't think anyone really cares about min-maxing in this sort of way on Vow. Playing the game normally probably makes more sense. But I still wanted to show this, because I know at least a few of you want to know the viability of crossing with multiple players, so that's what that looks like. So we do have a few specific situations where crossing with 2 or even 3 players is still possible, but you risk cutting it close, and the best rule of thumb is to not overthink it. Just limit things to 1 player at a time. And don't forget to give the bridge 5 seconds to heal between uses.
Touchdown!
But you might be wondering, what's a safe weight for a solo player to cross with? And that brings me to point number 2. Don't cross with more than 100 pounds. Though 100 itself is okay, and I'm going to say that 104 pounds is the actual safe limit for the bridge. But I'll have to clarify this a bit. If you're careful with stepping onto the bridge with full stamina and holding sprint the whole time, 104 pounds should be good. I did a bunch of tests and I never once collapsed the bridge at this weight, but it does cut things really close. But I'm also not suggesting that anything higher is totally impossible. I'm just marking 104 pounds as the weight where I can cross safely consistently. At 105 pounds, I've still been able to cross the bridge without collapsing it, but the likelihood of pulling that off feels like a coin toss. A lot of runs at this weight wind up collapsing the bridge, but that usually happens just as I step off and I do get to avoid falling below. So if you don't mind collapsing the bridge and crossing in style, that's certainly an option. At 106 pounds, I've also been able to do the same thing where I just barely make it across. However, the key difference here, compared to 105 pounds, is that I haven't once made it across without also causing collapse. And a lot of attempts do result in missing the ledge and sliding below. Maybe there's some way to do it, perhaps a fancier stamina management trick than just holding sprint the whole time. So I'm not saying no one will find a way to avoid collapse at 106, but you can see how we're hitting a wall here. So for now I'm presenting these as the weight breakpoints for a solo player. 104 pounds is safe to cross, 105 pounds, the bridge will probably collapse but you can still make it, 106 pounds, the bridge will almost definitely collapse and there's a good chance you'll fall. And to simplify this information back into a good rule of thumb, and to give players just a little more overhead, you might as well think of 100 pounds as the limit. I'd like to thank joshcantcode for helping datamine to spot some of the precise changes for this patch. Another change that occurred is that the Giants now collapse the bridge faster, now taking only 4.25 seconds instead of 6. I think this is a good change because trying to use the bridge to get away from them was a bit tricky previously. It was harder to time things without having them easily cross and catch up to you. The timing of this feels more intuitive now, so I feel like Zeekerss hit a sweet spot with this. Josh also made a demonstration where he visualized the bridge's hitbox, which shows where it's safe to stand. To close out this video, I also wanted to highlight this hilarious outtake regarding crossing the bridge with 4 players total. 4 players with 0 weight should normally make the bridge collapse in just a hair over 3 seconds. That's not really enough time to make it. Though bear in mind that by not having every player step onto the bridge at the same time, this means you can have a small window where the bridge will collapse at the rate of 3 players instead of 4, buying you just a little more time. But of course, that extra time is somewhat offset by the continued loss of durability from the player who is furthest behind, so there is a trade-off there. I knew the numbers cut things extremely close, in such a way where I thought there might be a way to have 4 players cross, and it even crossed my mind to issue a sort of challenge to see if anyone could pull that off. I wasn't even really planning on trying it myself, but I had a few extra players with me who were just waiting around to play a normal session afterwards, and through a bit of miscommunication, an extra player just yellowed it and ran with us when I was only trying to cross with 3 players total.
Boo! Whoa, who came with us? Oh, 4 of us came.
So shout out to Mandy. I imagine this is very hard to do intentionally, but here she made it across like it was no big deal, on literally the first and only attempt. So that's all for now. I did edit the previous video title, and I included a stickied comment pointing out that it was patched, but given the reach of the first video, I felt like a follow-up clarification was a good idea. Now, unless anything absolutely wild happens to the bridge in a later patch, I'll probably leave it with this, and any further changes will just be mentioned in a pinned comment. I did want to say that I was overwhelmed with the positive feedback on my previous video. A bunch of people dropped in with further data mining info and updated the wikis really quickly. That was fantastic to see. I'll probably make at least a couple more Lethal Company videos, but it could be a minute. I'm deep into a few Dark Souls projects, so those are going to come first. But whereas previously on the fence about making more for Lethal Company, now I'm already thinking about the next topic, so it should happen eventually. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.